Hey guys, hope you're all doing well. Now for today's video, I wanted to talk about one of the most insane Jurassic Park stories ever conceived. One that unfortunately never got to see the light of day. So what if I told you that in 1997, we almost got a Jurassic Park story that focused on a dark conspiracy inside of InGen? What if I told you that there were traitors amongst John Hammond's science divisions that sought to sell off the company's secrets in order to make some quick outside cash? And what if I told you that all this stuff would have led to the creation of a few failed experiments that would ultimately be sold off as bioweapons from Jurassic Park? Well, my friends, all of this stuff is not only true, it was damn close to becoming a reality. To put things into better context, some of you may remember the video I did a while back on the cancelled animated series for the Lost World Jurassic Park that was in development over at DreamWorks in the 1990s. Well, after Jurassic Outpost first brought that information over to us, I gotta say I got really interested in just what the hell this story would have been like back in the day. Unfortunately, I kind of didn't have any real time to look into it until recently because there was just so much information coming out about the new Jurassic World movie, the live tour, and the Netflix series that auxiliary stuff like this became more difficult to spend time on. With all of that being said though, I recently had enough time to reach out to one of the guys who actually worked on that show, and I got to ask him a few questions about the Lost World series story had it ever been completed and presented to the public, which is where all of this new information is going to be coming from today. From what I've been told, the bioweapon aspect of the Lost World animated series would have been based on a conspiracy that was compared to another popular science fiction property you all may have heard of, The X-Files. You see, some military personnel had actually been the ones to influence some of Jurassic Park's science teams during the plot, and genetic information would begin to be sold off to the military, as well as some other nefarious people in the show. Now, some of the dinosaurs in the series would have actually been experimented on and tampered with in order to weaponize them for military purposes. These dinosaurs would begin to mutate and create weird and bizarre monsters that would evoke much more of a vicious and less animalistic side to the franchise. One of these creatures was going by the name of the Doomsday Rex, which never had a final design, but it looks like it was either going to be this three-headed slug monster or this two-headed tyrannosaur hybrid. Ideas like this were actually being floated around and played with quite a lot back in the 1990s, with another monstrous creature that Spielberg even said bordered on being alien-like with the Superraptor, that they ultimately cut out of the second film's script. However, nothing really topped what was going on here with the whole mutant dinosaur field experiment bioweapon angle that this show would have pursued. Had this ever been released, I think that we would have seen the series experiment with some of the ideas that the new films have looked into much earlier in the franchise's timeline. And it probably would have evoked a very Dino Crisis or Resident Evil feel, which, if you can't tell by now, I'm also a very big fan of. Now, while this series would ultimately end up getting canceled by Steven Spielberg, I can say without a shadow of a doubt that it had nothing to do with the actual content or ideas that were going on here. Because just 1 year later, Jurassic Park Chaos Effect would become a thing that also was going to play with the idea of dinosaur experiments that weren't exactly 100% natural. The only difference in that show is that it looks like it would have been targeting children a lot more than what the Lost World series was going for. And of course, if you've seen Jurassic World or Fallen Kingdom, well, the entire plot of the fifth film in the series deals with militarizing a bioweapon on the black market. And it pretty much follows the first Resident Evil story in a lot of different ways, right down to the spooky mansion and the evil lab that sits in its basement. With all of that being said, I want to bring up one more thing about this era of the franchise because I think it's important for me to really say something that's been on my mind for a very long time now. This is not the only offshoot story in the film series that deals with these sort of story elements. Bioweapons, dinosaur hybrids, government conspiracies, and a focus on genetic ethics is something that I've come across a lot while doing research for the channel. And it pains me to say this, but there are times where I personally feel like it's trying to be covered up. When people usually talk about Jurassic Park, they talk about the dinosaurs. Sometimes they'll use little bits and pieces from the Jurassic Park team's marketing department about this film being a movie that treated the dinosaurs like animals and not monsters, and sometimes you'll hear things like, oh, Jurassic Park should only be focused on paleontology and the most accurate representations of these creatures. And hey, I would have been right there with you 3 years ago when I hadn't done any of the research and hadn't learned of the truth of what was going on behind the scenes for the last few decades. But honestly, I think when I came across the dinosaur-human hybrid story that they actually released to the public, not the concept art for JP4, but the actual Halloween Horror Nights event that you could publicly go to and see at Universal Studios in 2002, I think that's when a part of me kind of accepted the reality of what was really going on outside of Jurassic Park fan message boards. Now personally, I do like it when they buckle down and explore animal behavior and the clones' relationships with their real-life counterparts in the fossil record. If I don't see feathers on dinosaurs in Jurassic World Dominion, at least a few species, I'll probably be a little disappointed. But hey, I'm also a fan that loves the whole genetic engineering aspect of making a dinosaur through the extraction of extinct DNA and blending it with that of a frog's. I like both aspects of the story, not just one. So when I see stuff like this come out, and it's all true, it's all legitimate ideas for Jurassic Park stories that were in development and very close to being released to all of us as kids, I get a little surprised to see the backlash it can sometimes bring just because it isn't dealing with something from the first trilogy of movies. I guess before I started doing this full time, I was what you'd call a casual Jurassic Park fan. I read both books and I watched the 3 movies, but I didn't really think too much about anything else. Then I started reading the comic books from the 90s. Then I started researching the canceled animated series that were in development. Then I learned about the Grabnadu and the Super Raptor and Dr. Burton and a wild assortment of all kinds of other things that Steven Spielberg himself was commissioning to get made. And that's when it kind of hit me that Jurassic Park was much more than what I'd been led on to believe. I guess what I'm trying to say here is that just because an idea like this is pretty wild and bizarre and out there compared to anything we really saw as children, don't forget that this was supposed to come out in 1997, and that this was supposed to bear the mark of Jurassic Park, just like everything else we had coming out at the time. Imagine if you had seen it back when you were super impressionable and absorbing everything around you that got released. If you do all that, you might just look at this franchise in a little bit of a different light when coming across stuff like this. Because I know that I most certainly do. Now before I go, I'd like to thank all of my game wardens, as well as all of my InGen executives. I'd also like to thank all of my park workers and InGen hunters as well. Guys, it seriously means the world to me that you all continue to support what I do, and I never want you to ever forget that. Now, I'd like to thank you all for watching today's video, and hope that you all enjoyed the content. If you feel like I deserve it, I'd appreciate the like and hope that you'll consider subscribing if you're interested in hearing from me again. I'll see you all in the next video, guys, and as always, take it easy.